in this video I'm going to talk about routes, what they are, and a couple of ways to create them. Routes are not the same as tracks. Routes and tracks have two different constructs, and the two shouldn't be confused. A route is a defined path that can be navigated by the GPS, telling the operator where to go and when to turn. So a route can be created manually by the operator or automatically calculated by the GPS. So when a route is created automatically by the GPS, that's what we refer to as auto routing. So routes can be created offline using Garmin BaseCamp or Garmin MapSource on your computer, and some GPS models have the ability to create routes manually right on the GPS. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of ways to create routes offline using Garmin BaseCamp on a Windows PC. The Mac process is nearly identical. So when you launch BaseCamp, you're going to be asked about an activity. And you'll notice that Garmin has not yet recognized snowmobiling as an activity. Hopefully someday that'll change. Activities are not really that important. It basically provides a way for you to set up multiple profiles in terms of how BaseCamp creates routes and displays data. So you can change or set up your activity profiles through this activity pull-down menu. All the way at the bottom, you can edit your activity profile. So there are two tabs, a general tab and a routing tab, and we're currently set to the ATV activity. Again, it really doesn't matter much at all about how this is set up. So we'll stick with ATV. For map display features, we'll just leave that at the default where everything is displayed. On the routing tab, we are going to set routing to the shorter distance, and we do that because routing on snowmobile trails is very accurate in terms of distance and number of miles, but it's very inaccurate in terms of how fast somebody can ride a particular trail. The elevation mode, we'll leave that on standard, and we want to uncheck every single avoidance. So that tells the routing algorithm that we don't want to avoid any of these types of roads or situations. We happen to use these types of roads to define our trails, so we don't want to avoid them. So everything there should be checked off, and you can ignore this speed customization at the bottom. Now you can save that, or you can also create a snowmobiling activity profile, if you want. So you just hit that plus button, and we'll type in snowmobiling, and we'll base it on the ATV profile that we just went through. You could put an image in here if you didn't like this guy, if you happen to have one, but we'll just stick with the ATV. So now we have a snowmobiling profile set up for BaseCamp. The next thing that you should do is create a list. So on this left-hand panel, under the library section, you'll see basically my collection. These are the various lists of data. BaseCamp refers to them as lists. And you'll want to create one by selecting the main folder, doing a right click, and click on New List. And we're going to call this My Routes. And this is where we will be creating and saving all of our routes that we're going to experiment with. So the next thing you need to do is move off of the default global map and select either your GPS Trailmasters ATV map or snowmobile map. So there are several ways in BaseCamp to create routes. I'm going to focus on the new route tool, which is this tool icon here. And we will be toggling between the new route tool icon and the hand icon, which is used to pan and zoom. So we'll focus in on an area here in Pittsburgh, and we'll go to the route tool, and by default you have the option of dragging a start and destination into these areas. We're going to skip this for now and get back to that, so we're just going to close that, and we're going to use the route tool in its most basic form by clicking on our start point. So we're going to start right here at Tall Timber Lodge. We'll click that. Then I'm using the mouse wheel to zoom out, and then we'll rubber band this route tool over to our destination, in this case, which will be Stub Hill Pond. We'll click there, and then to terminate this route, you want to press the escape key. Excuse me. And then we go back to our hand for panning and zooming, and you'll see that the route was calculated for us from our starting point to our end point. You'll notice that lake crossings are never used to create routes. Now, that's point A to point B, and based on our activity, we indicated that we wanted the shortest distance. Now, suppose we wanted to take a little longer path. So on the left-hand panel, again, our route that we just created is listed here. So we'll click on that, and then with the right click, we can go down and delete that route. So again, we'll go back to our starting point around Back Lake. We'll select the route tool. We'll bypass this option. We will zoom in with the thumb wheel to our starting point. Click, left click, zoom out. Now we're going to go a ways up north first. And we're going to click there and set what's called a via point. And we're going to continue and go back to Stub Hill, click again, hit escape to terminate, go back to the hand tool, and now you've got a longer route that takes you up north and then back down. Now there's a peculiarity or a bug with Garmin BaseCamp where this initial leg is drawn as a straight line to the first intersection, and any via points that you select also have this same peculiarity of drawing a straight line to the nearest intersection. So to avoid that, there's a method that you can use. So let's again delete this route, and we'll start again. And I encourage you to do this over and over again and experiment. So we'll hit our route tool, bypass that, click our starting point, and to avoid those straight lines, we can't avoid the first one, but we can avoid all the other ones. If you move the route tool to the intersection, you'll notice that the pop-up says primary 141 and clubs. That indicates an intersection, and we click on that intersection, and then we go back up north. And if we click on an intersection up north, we'll avoid those intermediary straight lines. So here, primary 141 and a club trail, we'll click that as a via, and we'll come down here and we'll click this intersection. Again, I'm using my thumb wheel to zoom in and out. And we're going to go even longer. this time. We're going to go all the way out to the border. Click there, and then we'll go down to Stub Hill. Escape, switch to the hand. Okay, now we've got an even longer route, but in this case we avoid those straight line peculiarities that happen when we don't click on an intersection. Now the next thing we want to do is sort of walk this route so that you become a little bit familiar with how the routing algorithm behaves. So if you double click on that route, it brings up this pop-up, and this pop-up allows you to effectively see your start, end, and your via points. We want to go to the Route Directions tab, and here you'll see that this route is calculated as 40 miles and an hour and a half. Again, the distance is very accurate. However, the time is very inaccurate. Okay, so everybody rides trails at different speeds, and everybody is going to have a different time for this same route. So when we click on each one of these directions, you'll get that particular spot highlighted in this yellow circle. So here we're starting out at Tall Timber, and the first thing we do is get on Club and ride north. That is fairly true. So even though we have a straight line, it tells us to start riding north on the Club Trail. Then the first turn we have is a left onto Primary 141. Then we have a left on 141, 147, and then a right, and a left, and you'll see that this intersection was skipped. And sometimes that will happen if you're on a trail and that trail is relatively straight and the trail name does not change. It assumes that you're just going to keep riding on that trail. It didn't tell you to turn onto 142, so it won't give you any particular information like go straight at this intersection. At this intersection, it does give you a turn, and so forth, another turn, and you'll notice that this intersection again was skipped. So we're on 141, we're staying on 141. It's a relatively straight intersection, so it assumes that you're going to go right through that intersection. Gives you another turn, and so forth. The other interesting thing on this screen is back on the properties. If you had a loop, or for whatever reason you got your start and end backwards, or you wanted to create the same route home, you could hit this invert and it changes these arrows going the other direction, and then these directions are in reverse going back. So those are the main things on the route display. So lastly, what we'll do, we'll delete this guy again, and I'll show you how to use that initial route tool where you drag the start and stop location in there. And this is not a bad way of doing it because you establish some waypoints. So what we will do is we'll go up and we'll use the new waypoint tool. Excuse me. And we'll create a let's say we've got a cottage here on Back Lake. We can click on that and rename that to our Back Lake home base. And if we want, we can change that symbol to something different. And once we have that first waypoint created, it shows up in our list over here. And just for your information, what gets displayed here is selected down at the bottom. So here you have your routes. We have no more routes. Your tracks, I have one track in there, and your waypoints. So we have one waypoint. And then we will go back to the hand anytime we click around and zoom. And in this case, we're going to go all the way over to Rangeley Main, and we'll set another waypoint here in Rangeley, and we'll call that the Rangeley Marina, and we'll make that a pirate face. So now we have two waypoints. Go back to the hand. And now when we select our route tool, we can drag our home base as the start, and we can drag the Rangeley Marina as the destination, and you'll see that the route gets automatically calculated. And that again is based on your activity, in which case we have said that we want to go the shortest distance, and we have no avoidances selected. And so that's what it's done. So now, once you have experimented and gotten used to the route tool, again, we are showing waypoints in this area now. We click on the route filter, and we'll show our routes. So once you have a route that you're comfortable with, and you want to download it to the GPS, you can leave this long name there, or you can right click, rename, and we'll just call that our Sunday ride. So once you have that renamed, then you go up to the device menu, and in this case our Montana is already connected. All of these steps that I showed you can be done without your GPS connected. Ultimately, when it comes time to load the route down to the GPS, you'll need to connect the GPS. So here our Montana is already connected. So we'll go to device, send to device, and you can either send your entire collection. In this case, my collection is highlighted, which is not what we want, or you can send the selected item to the device. So you can either select my routes, which does not have our routes in it, so let me just show you quickly. Our Sunday ride was created in the My Collection top folder. We can just drag that up into My Routes. And it's actually in both places now, so we can delete it from here. And that says it will be deleted from all lists, so we won't do that. So we'll go back to My Routes, and when we go to device, we can send everything in My Routes, in which case there's only one route in there. Or if there were multiple routes in here, we could select just the one route, and in this case send to device, send selection to device. So either way, it will then ask you what device you want to send it to. We'll say the Montana, and it's very quick. So if you happen to have your Montana device being shown in a My Computer window, as I have here, and you go to the Garmin folder and the GPX folder, you'll see that a route GPX file was installed and a waypoint GPX file. These are the two files that contain this information that we created. And that's it for the BaseCamp portion of creating a route. Now that we've transferred our routes and waypoints over to the GPS, there are a couple of places where these show up.
The first, if you look at your list of applications here, is under the route planner. Okay, so you'll see the Sunday ride route is listed there. The second place you'll find this is under the where to command. And here you'll see that you have a category called routes, and your route is also listed there. And if you remember, we also created a couple of waypoints, and those waypoints got transferred down to the GPS as well, and they're listed under the category of waypoints. Now, in order to test this route, I want to put this GPS into a simulation mode. So we go to an application on the Montana called Satellite. Within that, we say that we want to use with the GPS off, and that puts us into a simulation mode. And the second thing we want to do is set our location on the map. So rather being outside of a riding area, we'll simulate putting our position where our routes are. So I'll scroll out to a fairly good sized area, and then I'll move up into Pittsburgh. And for this demonstration, we'll just set our simulated location to our home base. And once you get the pin right on the base of the flag, it'll indicate that that's where you're identifying as your starting point that you want to use. So we'll say that we want to use that as our simulated location. And then we'll go back out, and we'll use the where to method. We'll select routes, select our Sunday ride, and you'll see that the route initially comes up as a straight line, and then it gets auto-calculated. You'll also see that the distance of that route is displayed in the upper right, in the upper portion of the screen. And so at this point we would just simply say go. And since we're in a simulation mode, it's asking us if we want to simulate driving, which we will. And you'll see that the GPS indicates that we are headed on 141. If you remember the initial anomaly there, where we draw a straight line to the first intersection, so it believes that we're starting on 141. So we have to make that quick scoot down that club trail to get on 141, and then it indicates that our first turn is going to be a left-hand turn in 1.2 miles. So by clicking on that ribbon, you'll get your complete list of turn by turn. And if you want to terminate that simulation, you just say stop navigation. So the next thing I want to do is show you how to create routes manually right here on the GPS. And to do that, we're going to use the route planner, and you'll see at the top there's a create route, and it'll ask us to select our first point. And then there's a number of different ways that you can select points. The first way I'll show you is using waypoints. So we select waypoints, and we have our 2 waypoints that we added. So we'll select home base and say we want to use that as our first point. So our first point is listed, gives us the option to select the next point. And again, we'll go to waypoints, and we'll select the Rangeley Marina as the final point, and we'll say we want to use that. So now we have 2 points. We could continue through this method selecting multiple via points, or in this case we have our start and our finish and we're done, so we just stop entering points and that route is created, and it's just simply called Route 1. So we can view that route on the map, and it's initially comes up as a straight line. Sometimes it doesn't calculate, so you have to go back and say I want to view it again, and this time it does the calculation. So our distance here is 54 miles, and if we wanted to travel this route we would say go. The next thing I want to show you is a couple of alternate ways to create routes. So we'll go into the create route again, select first point, and this time we're going to use some points of interest. So we will start out at our pretend lodging, which let's just say is Cardinal Cabins. Use as our start. Select next. And in this case we want to go someplace for lunch. So we'll go down to the food and drink. And you'll see that all the food and drink is listed in order of distance. So we're going to go down a ways until we find something that's a little bit further. So we'll go to the Rangeley Tavern and use as our second point. So now we have our start and our finish. So we're done with this route. We go back and we have a second route called Route 2. If we view that on the map, you'll see the route there from Cardinal Cabins over into Rangeley. And again, we would say go if we wanted to use that route. The third method, which is using the map. So in this case we would enter our existing home base as the start. Select next point, use map. And so we're just going to simply scroll to where we want to ride to. So in this case we'll head up towards the border, and we'll put our destination there and say use that. And so we have a start and a stop. We'll terminate that route. That route is called Route 3. Okay, so that's our third route. And these routes, you can delete them or rename them. So if you wanted to rename this route, you could just simply call it Border Run. And if you didn't really want that route, you could delete that route. And you can also edit them and add more via points. And the last method for routing, it's not so much routing as it is on-the-fly planning, is that if you're out on the trail, regardless of where you are, and you decide that you just want to go someplace, you can simply touch that position, that location. So let's say we want to go up to the Stub Hill. We would touch that, touch the club, and say go. And so it's not necessarily a route. You don't necessarily define your starting point. Your starting point is your current location, but it is a quick way to just auto-navigate to a particular destination. And that concludes the routing portion on the Garmin Montana GPS.